Welcome to the Power Hour, Optometry's biggest and longest running show. I'm your host, Eugene, and we've got an absolutely amazing show for you today. Of course, we're in the middle of back to school season, and I wanted to talk to somebody who is just doing so well with back to school, especially in the area of myopia management this season. And this particular episode went in a little bit in a direction I wasn't exactly expecting. My guest is Dr. Kate Daluyin, and she's built a very successful myopia management program inside her Charlotte practice. And pretty quickly in our conversation, something caught my attention. Kate told me that when she identifies a child who needs myopia management, which is about half of the patients that she sees, most of the deeper follow-up conversations happen virtually. And so there's no gap between I need to bring you back for a follow-up and then that patient not showing up. Like, most of those are kept. And then she told me that roughly 60% of those virtual consultations turn into a $4,500 case. Okay, now hopefully I got your attention, because I really wanted to understand what the heck was happening. What does she say during that first exam? How does she get patients to actually show up for the consultation? What happens during the virtual consultation that gets that kind of acceptance? And then there was another twist. It turns out that Kate isn't even the one doing all of these virtual consults, which opened up an entirely different conversation about how the program's built and how she presents myopia management to families, and why she believes that many practices should be approaching the conversation in a much more direct way. So this is like a playbook style episode. Like, we get very, very tactical. She tells me exactly what she says to parents to get that kind of conversion rate. Like, think about it. She saw 20 kids in a month. Half of them are myopia management candidates. And then 6 of those 10 that are half, so 6 out of all the kids she saw this month, if she saw 20 kids, are paying $4,500. So how did she do that? She's literally going to walk you through step by step of what that looks like. And what I can tell you is that under all of it, Kate has this very, very strong philosophy about myopia management. She believes that we're moving past treating kind of as an elective specialty type of service towards treating this as part of the standard of care. And once you hear how she talks about it, how she thinks about it, you're going to understand why her conversations with parents sound very different than providers who are just kind of trying to treat it as a subspecialty. As always, make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And if you have questions, ideas, feedback, or suggestions about the show, please reach out to me directly at eugeneschatzman.com. And now, here's today's Power Hour. Kate, welcome to the Power Hour. Excited to have you on the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm super stoked to be here.
Okay, so just so that everyone's got a little bit of background, why don't you give everybody some little minor story here about who you are, how you got into the practice that you're in now, and really what you've been building.
Yeah, absolutely. I will be the first to say that my story is really special, not only to myself, but to my partners as well. I actually started working at Studio 2020 here in Charlotte, North Carolina, about 15 years ago when I was in college, just trying to get some hands-on medical clinical hours. And that's why I was really introduced to the field of optometry. And after being a technician for about 3 weeks, it really opened my eyes to how amazing this profession is. And I completely changed from going to dermatology to optometry school. And so the doctors that I mentored under, they said, hey, if you go to optometry school and you do everything that you need to do, we'll hire you back on after you're finished. And I said, well, I'm going to hold you to that. And so I did. And then back in 2021, they hired me back on as a provider. So I've been on the other side of things for about 5 years now between 2 locations, kind of splitting the city. But that's my really special story. So I have really deep ties to this practice and love it really deeply.
That's awesome. And by the way, anyone listening who says that there's not enough optometrists in the field, I mean, this is what a great recruiting technique. Open up your office to some interns and then convince them to become optometrists.
100%. I know we're here to talk about myopia, but if you need to learn how to convince technicians to go to optometry school, I am your girl. We constantly are hiring students because they are dedicated and eager to learn. And I believe over the course of the 24 years of this practice, we've probably sent 16 staff members off to optometry school.
Okay, and how many of those 16 came back and became optometrists at the practice?
Me, just me, but everyone else has gone off and, been all over the country or opened their own practices or joined the VA or something other super special story. But I'm the only solo one that has decided to come back. But I'm from Charlotte. My family is here, so it was an easy decision.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. So, um, as you said, it's back to school season, so we're going to spend some time on myopia. How did
Yeah.
myopia management even kind of come across your radar as you were as you were starting to figure out where you were going to specialize in practice?
Sure. A lot of that does have to go back to my roots as a technician. The providers that I worked for here at this office were utilizing Ortho K probably back, 2008, 2009, early 2010, because they really saw that there was a need to help slow the prescription down in rapidly changing children. So, as a technician and someone who's also emmetropic and doesn't even wear eyeglasses, this was completely foreign to me. And so I had that very typical, wait a second, someone can put a contact lens in and sleep and wake up and see clearly the next day. And it was this magical moment for me. And so working with the kids, teaching them how to put in the lenses and take them out, even many years ago as a technician, is really what sparked my interest. On top of, our practice does a lot of specialty lenses. So, of course, the very classic keratoconus puts a scleral lens on, sees the world again for the first time, tears in their eyes. I was absolutely hooked. And so I knew going into optometry school that I wanted to do some sort of specialty contact lens working with kids who have myopia from the get-go. And when I was in residency, I had the ability to manage our myopia management clinic and work with kids side by side and really see the progression of, oh my gosh, we can slow this down. And as things have changed and we've gained FDA authorizations, we have even more technology at our fingertips. It's just amazing. And I'm really excited to not only be someone who's really deep in this subspecialty, but also just to see where this area goes, because it's not about to be a specialty any longer. Every optometrist should be doing myopia management, honestly.
Yeah, and I've heard that from a number of people that this is the standard of care at this point.
Yep.
And I guess maybe tell me a little bit about as it's what's been your perspective as it's kind of gone from subspecialty to like more mainstream to like now a little bit more standard of care. How have conversations changed for you as both as a provider but also with parents?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's definitely changed. Beforehand, it was, there are these treatments, we can help, if it's something you're interested in, those types of words kind of tiptoeing lightly of, like, I know the science, it works, but I really don't know. We have over 10,000 myopia management research papers that are out there, and there's even more. That was just a few years ago. And now it is just so factual that it's just a matter of fact for me. I talk to a parent, this is what is an issue, this is how we treat it, and this is what we're doing. And I really don't make it an option. And I have very high confidence in the treatments because we have the data to show that we can actually do something. So to me, it's just as simple of, hey, you are developing glaucoma, you need to be on a prostaglandin or get SLT or start your treatment however you so choose. If your child has myopia and we know that they're changing, then they absolutely need to be on treatment. This is just what we do. It's the next best step. It's the best way to care for a child.
Yeah, that's awesome, and we're going to dig a lot deeper into into that and how you lead these conversations and what objections come up. But let me ask you this: I bet some of the things that have led to this level of confidence that you have is not just the 10,000 research papers, but it's also the fact that there's probably some rewarding feeling at the as a child progresses. And talk to me about some of the kids you've graduated from treatment and what do their parents say and what happens to the kids and like just like
Yeah.
what's that experience like?
Yeah, I have a couple of patients just off the top of my mind. One is someone that I didn't start with, but he was actually our very first Ortho K patient here at the practice probably back in 2009. Mom came from China and knew about Ortho-K, sought Ortho-K services at our practice. This child was 7 years old and he was already a -6. And so she was very eager to get him in orthokeratology. And so our practice said, yes, let's do it. We're here to help. We'll figure it out side by side with you. Fast forward to just this past summer, so 2025, he has been in Ortho-K from 2009 to 2025. We did a total washout because he's graduated from college. He's an adult now. He's like, I think I'm done with these. I don't really sleep a lot at night. Fine. He is still to this day a -6. And so from the time he was 7 years old to the time that he's around mid-20s now, he never changed in his prescription. And there's several patients that are like that. And so I just saw a patient earlier this week who I just officially graduated out of Ortho-K, and she'd also been in an Ortho-K lens for 7 years. She started when she was 8, I believe, and she was about a -150. Now she's 17, headed off to college. Again, doesn't want to sleep in lenses in college. And we just washed her out at a -150. She didn't change the entire time. And so these treatments, they are effective and they work. And it's really amazing to see that when a parent, we finally decide to say, hey, we're done managing this myopia. We're out of the high risk growth rate zone. And we say, let's just go back to standard lenses or go back to a regular contact lens, to see that where a child started is pretty much the same as where they finished. It's like, oh my gosh, all of those years that we've put in are totally worth it. The years of financial investment from the family, the years of an uncomfortable lens overnight, it's all worth it. And it feels really rewarding to know that someone can walk around the house as a -150 very differently than walking around the house as a -8. So to know
Yeah.
that you played a small part in it just feels so good.
And in both of those cases, what were mom and dad?
Oh my gosh, so thrilled. They're like, "Really, no change? Zero change? Really? No change?" I mean, the parents were just kind of shocked and in awe, and a lot of those families, when they see it really doesn't even take a graduation moment to get a family to understand the power of these treatments. It really takes 1 or 2 follow-up visits. Like, for Ortho-K as an example, if a patient comes in after wearing the lens 1 day, a lot of the times they see relatively clearly after 1 night of lens wear. And that alone is enough to make a patient or a patient's parent really understand the power of this technology. Or if
Mhm.
you have a patient that's in a daytime contact lens or is using eyewear or atropine, and they come back 3, 6, 9 months during their first year of treatment, and we're hardly seeing any change in their axial length, their prescription is not changing. Usually the big impression happens within those first few months. So by the time we get to graduation, it's kind of just like a, woo, we did it. It was awesome. But the parents have already celebrated way beforehand when they actually start to see that that treatment is truly working.
That's a really good point. And I imagine that that's extra effective for parents that are high myopes as well, or that have high
Incredibly
myopes.
so. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of colleagues out there that will tell us, if you have someone who's highly myopic, go ahead and plant the seed. I absolutely do that for any patient that is in their 20s and like early 30s, whether they're in a relationship or not. I just very gently say, it was different when we were growing up. When we were growing up, your eyes would get worse and worse and worse. Now we can actually do something about it. So if you ever choose to start a family, we will watch your child very closely and make sure that we intervene as soon as we can. And that's just enough to plant the seed as someone who is a high myope. But many of these families, if your parents are myopic, they know what it's like. They know what it's like for their glasses to change a diopter every year, and they don't want that for their kids. So they're happy to help in any way that they can.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let's talk about back to school at your practice.
Yeah.
Describe the back to school season for you guys, and really, let's talk about from the very beginning, like when do you start thinking about it, and then how busy is it right now because we're right in the midst of it, and
Right.
what's it, and we'll get into some of your numbers in a moment.
Sure. So it's a great question because we actually shifted our strategy a little bit this year. Typically a lot of our back to school messaging goes out in August, and August is crazy back to school. In our city, we have a lot of different school systems that all start at different times. And so it's always a rush of first week of August versus second week versus third week. I want to get this done before my kid goes back. And so we have felt that pressure over the past several years. We just feel like we're drinking from a fire hose every August. So this year, we actually strategically sent out our back to school messaging in June so that parents could actually get their children in over the summer so that if they needed to learn how to wear contacts, if they needed to update their eyewear, that it would be done prior to August so that families could focus on all of the other back to school rush and not have to worry about trying to get their kid in for an eye exam. So that's been working out really well. I feel like we kind of just had a back to school summer, honestly. I feel like we've seen a lot of kids all summer long. But it's been helpful because kiddos who've needed myopia management have been able to start therapy back in July so that by the time that they go back in August, adapting to new contacts or adapting to new eyewear is already a thing of the past. It's not going to be another hurdle or something that they have to encounter ahead of time. So we still are seeing a lot of kids. We're still kind of running around crazy with a lot of children in the office. But it was a really good strategy for us this year was to get the messaging out a little bit sooner so that we could actually space it out and give ourselves more time and more grace. If a child was struggling to learn an INR, we could get them back in before trying to wake up at school an hour early and learn how to put contacts in. We're trying to avoid all those situations for families.
Yeah, and I found that that strategy is effective for practices that are good at myopia management. We have a number of clients that we did that same thing for. It start late June and to try to say like basically beat the back to school rush.
Yeah.
But that messaging is not effective if all you're doing is trying to get the glasses because parents are like, well, they're going to break their glasses before the end of vacation. So you have to
Right.
be good at myopia management, and you have to know that 50 to 60% of the patients that come in are going to be offered a myopia management program if they if and with a high acceptance rate if that messaging is to be effective. So it's really good to hear that you started that. So now let's zoom in a little bit. A kid comes in for a back to school exam. Let's say this is a new kid you haven't seen before. What's that like? Walk us through the visit.
Yeah, absolutely. So our team will get them started. We have super techs, as many practices do. They get them worked up, through an AR. Every single child gets axial length in our office, 18 and younger, regardless of what their prescription is, new or established status. We do axial length on everybody. And so, they get their standard workup and then they come in and see me. And one of the first things I do before I even start my exam is I look at a kid and I say, do you think you need glasses today? And that tells me where a child is at. So if they say, yes, I know that they are wanting glasses, they're excited about it. If they're like, no, and really scared, then I know that my messaging as a provider, if they do end up needing prescription, I'm going to have to be a little bit more gentle because I don't want to make them upset by telling them they need glasses for the first time. So I always gauge the child, number one, just by seeing, do they think their vision is blurry? And are they even excited to get any sort of eyeglass prescription? The next thing I do is I always check ocular motility. First things first, I have to make sure the eyes are aligned. So, I mean, I've already looked at the AR, I've already looked at an axial length, I've already looked, at a Optos image to make sure that their eyes look healthy. I can relatively see what I need to, but what I want to know is a child seeing double? Are they struggling with any sort of binocular vision disorder? Are they able to have a good ability to converge? Because all of that is super impactful on learning. I mean, you know that for certain. So that's my number one portion is I always do ocular motility, make sure that there's no glaring binocular vision dysfunction. And then I go into usually the health because I want to make sure that if the exam is slightly geared potentially towards contacts at the end of the conversation, I'd like to make sure that the cornea is healthy. We do topography on every child as well. We actually do topography on every single patient, regardless. It's a part of our AR. And so I'm always looking at the cornea to make sure that it's healthy enough for a contact lens, always making sure that the ocular surface, there's no major signs of allergies, retinal health, of course. And then the last thing I do is determine their prescription. So it helps a parent understand that I am emphasizing the function and the health of a child's eye before I even emphasize that they need eyeglasses because it's so easy. It's most parents will always come in and say, well, does my kid need glasses? That's all I care about. I'm trying to be an advocate for a child's health and say, I want you to understand that the health of the eye is of utmost importance, and determining if they can see clearly is really, really, really close, but we're going to save it for last. So then I determine, via RET, based off of, if the child is old enough to do a refraction, we can. I use my RET a lot because, especially if you have a younger kid who's 5 or 6 years old, it's hard to get them behind the phoropter. So we put on their favorite TV show and they're super intrigued, and I just RET, and I'm like, okay, what do I see? With, against, call it a day. So after that, if it determines that they are myopic, then we go into a myopia discussion afterwards. Luckily, that's well, not necessarily luckily, but I would say for 50% of our patients, they're lucky because a lot of our kids will be emmetropic or in that low plus range that's appropriate based off of their age. But for the other 50%, we then start a pretty serious conversation about what our next steps are.
Okay. Before we talk about what that conversation sounds like, you just went over a lot of stuff, and I just want to back up for a moment.
Sure.
Um, you talked about topography, you talked about axial length. These are all measurements you get. How do you communicate to the parent? Like, are you like pulling them up? Are you showing them
Yeah.
stuff? Are you explaining all the stuff? Like, give me an idea of what your spiel sounds like when you're talking to a parent, because I think when I'm reading between the lines, I think this is where you build a ton of credibility for what comes next. So give
Correct.
me a little bit more of the um, like put me in that chair and describe to me what I'm seeing as the parent, if my kid just had an eye exam with you.
Sure. I'll focus primarily on axial length because that's probably the most pertinent to what we're talking about. Parents have no idea what axial length is, honestly. And so, what I usually say is just like Johnny goes to the pediatrician and gets measured his height and gets put on a girth chart, I measure the length of the eye and put it on his growth chart based off of his age. The average adult eye is anywhere between 24 and 25 millimeters, and little Johnny's is X, and that's pretty typical for his age or not typical for his age. And so at that point, if let's say little Johnny is already 24.6 and I know that he's myopic for the first time, I can say, little Johnny is 9 years old and already has almost a full grown adult eye. We need to try to slow that down as much as we can. Let me finish up getting a couple other measurements, but we're going to talk about how we can do that here in a little bit. So I kind of plant the seed early on. If I know that they have a really long axial length, or if I know that a patient has a normal axial length, I say, oh, perfect. He's right where he needs to be for a 7-year-old. This is exactly what I would expect. So axial length is usually my biggest tool for parents, just trying to educate them like they would a pediatrician. It's a growth measurement. How tall is your kid? How long is their eye? So,
Love that.
as a provider, you have to be careful though, because if a child has really flat Ks, you have to kind of consider like flat Ks, longer axial length. So that's where higher level thinking comes in the background. Not every child is super out of norm, but if we're talking about the large majority, axial length is definitely where I really start planting the seed for a lot of parents.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Now you said that that there's a subset of your patients who leave without a prescription, and there's a
Mhm.
subset of your patients who are going to get the talk. So just
Yes.
give me an idea, percentage wise, what percentage of your back to school exams are going to get the talk.
The talk for myopia is probably upwards of about 45 to 50% right now.
Okay. Okay.
So if I
So let's
see
just call them
if I
about
see
half.
10 kids in a day, half of them I'm probably talking about myopia management.
Okay, and you're doing it in the same exam. So now you got me there. I'm here. We've gone through the exam, and now we're going to talk about it. So I'm the parent. I'm in the chair. Tell me what you're saying to me.
Sure. So that's a little tricky because I don't necessarily do my whole spiel in the exam lane, which I used to, but from a chair time perspective, we have learned that that is really inefficient for our practice. So I plant the seed, I give a brief summary, which I'll go to in just a moment, and then I usually have the patient back. Or I do a virtual consultation. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But if you're a parent, I say, oh my gosh, little Johnny, he is definitely going to need eyeglasses this year. And like we talked about earlier, his eye is just much longer than what I would expect for someone his age. And his prescription is beyond what I would expect for someone his age as well. If you think about prescription in terms of a number line, 0 being the middle, plus on one side, minus on the other, ideally we want Johnny to be about a plus 50, plus 75, and today he's a minus 1.25. So he's almost a whole unit and a half beyond where I would expect someone his age. But not to fear, the good news is that we can actually prevent this from getting worse over the course of time. And there's several different treatment options that we can discuss. But I'm going to send you guys home with some information today. And what I'd like to do is schedule you back so that I can really go into all of those discussions. Or if it works better with you and your spouse, we can always do a virtual visit after hours. And I'm happy to go over what those look like for you guys. And that way I kind of just say, I have a limited amount of time here now. My next patient's not ready. My next one's getting worked up. We're a busy, constant practice. So that way, there's enough time to answer some basic questions. If the parent comes back and rebuttals with a couple of questions, I usually, again, will just try to divert to, hey, let's have a more in-depth discussion at a later time, whether it's virtually or we bring you back. And sometimes I'll also bring patients back to cyclo them to really make sure, like if I'm really not positive and there could be a accommodative component, I'll bring a patient back to cyclo and I'll make sure that's an absolutely separate visit. So parents are aware that their child's getting dilated. I mean, that's going to be over an hour exam anyways. So that really helps out too, to bring a patient back to get them cycloed.
Mm-hmm. What percentage of, so now you said half of the patients are getting the talk. So
Mm-hmm.
let's do a bigger number. So 100 patients seen by you, 50 of them are getting the talk.
Mm-hmm.
Of that 50, how many of them schedule that follow-up appointment, whether virtually or in office?
It's pretty high. So the in-office and virtual appointments, I would say upwards of 80 to 90%.
Okay.
Most
So,
parents, we've really captured their attention and have said, hey, this is a problem. This is something that we are concerned about, and we really need to discuss this further.
and I hear you. I think there's a lot of people who struggle with that. So, because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people try to bring back patients for a follow up, whether it's myopia management or dry eye or whatever. And like the numbers I hear in the industry are like, well, about 20% of the patients take us up on that. So, what do
Yeah.
you think is your key to success to getting 80 to 90% of those patients to do that?
I don't really make it an option. Like, I don't really give parents a choice. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I've assumed full care of their child. And so I'm going to care for their child as if it were my own. And that's what I tell parents. I say, look, I'm a mom myself. My husband is myopic. I'm not. I'm watching my child like a hawk. I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can. And so before we make any final decisions, I'd like to see your child back to investigate this further. And so I kind of just make it, you will have a follow-up visit. It's not really an option. And I think that's where myopia management is changing over the course of time. Whereas beforehand, when we first started our conversation, it was more like well, we think that these options and this could be really good for your child. To me, it's like, this is what we have to do. Your child is progressing. This is the next step. And this is when we're getting you scheduled. And that's pretty much it. And so I really don't question it. There's a lot of confidence when I say it. And it is what it is. Like, that is the next step. Like, I need you to come back for glaucoma testing. I need you to come back for a myopia management discussion. Like,
Yeah,
I
I
don't really
love it.
make it an option.
So interesting spin with the virtual visit. What of the people who come back, what percentage are virtual?
I would say the majority of them are virtual. The only
Mm,
ones that come back in the office are the ones that I've requested to do a full cycloplegic exam on. So, what has really changed our myopia management practice just here in our office is offering virtual consultations, because those we can do after hours. And a lot of times, they can be with me or with one of our other providers, but we have a dedicated staff member who's kind of our myopia management champion, who can also prep the parent for what those conversations are. So I'll
mm,
even tell parents, like, whether that's with myself or a team member, we can get this scheduled, after the kids have gone to bed, when you're with your spouse, we can have a discussion as a family. So we try to make it very easy for the parents to be able to schedule those. We send them a calendar link and they get to choose the day and time, and then they sign up, and then we just get on a virtual visit. So the majority of the parents are doing virtual visits because it's just easier and more convenient for them. And then also, the other thing to consider is that these treatments, they're an investment for a family. And so, at an annual eye exam, no one's really prepared to talk about like a braces type of investment. And so discussing it virtually can sort of ease them into that discussion of, hey, this is a long-term treatment. We're doing this, for the next 2 to 5 years. We're going to be changing treatments potentially over the course of time if we need to. So it helps them wrap their head around that, okay, this is not just eyeglasses. This is something that's much more.
Okay, Kate, this is really eye-opening, and I can't believe you almost glossed over this, is the virtual visit thing. So you do these after hours,
Yep.
oftentimes. It's brilliant to have both decision makers present, right?
Yep.
How long first of all, are they free? Do they cost any
They
money?
are. Yep.
That's great.
So
Okay.
virtual visits are free. Again, just like it would be if someone came in for just a consult. I mean, I know it's chair time, but we've done the calculation in our office, and for the amount of time that we spend consulting with a patient, we certainly make up for it in the patients that enroll. So for us, it's worth it. That's another way to really get patients to come back is that, well, it's not going to be anything extra, So our consults usually last anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. If you have a parent that's really heavy question asking, it can go upwards of an hour. But usually anywhere between that 30 and 45-minute mark, we try to wrap up the conversation.
Okay. And I, again, love this component, and you offer it after hours. So you could be virtual too. You don't have to be in the office. You could be,
Right. In
right.
my house.
Okay. Yeah, 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 perfect.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about your conversion rate first, and then we're going to talk about what you
Sure.
say second. So if you do 10 virtuals this month, how many of those are going to be patients that enroll?
I would probably say anywhere between 60 to 65% of our patients will enroll.
Okay. And what's the average price of a program for you for the first year?
So for us, we don't do it on a yearly basis. Our programming is on an every 24-month basis.
Okay.
So we offer our treatment. We know that through data, the greatest efficacy of myopia regression or slowing down that growth rate is between the first 18 and 24 months. And so I tell that to parents all the time. I say, we need a minimum of a 2-year commitment to really make sure that we have a solid foundation to get these treatments to work. So parents are committing to 2 years of treatment, and then after that, we do an annual 12-month program afterwards. Because you can
Okay.
argue, the first year or two, it's going to be a lot of follow-up visits. I mean, if you talk about someone who's an ortho K, you're doing a 1 day, a 1 week, a 1 month, potentially a remake, 3 months, 6 months. You can argue a 9 month and then a 12 month. So you're looking at 7 visits just in one calendar year. But if someone's been cruising along and they've been doing great, you probably only need to see them every 6 months. So subsequent years, there's less visits, there's less chair time. So our subsequent pricing is about 50% of what our upfront 24-month pricing is. And 24 months is about $4,500 for our market.
You said 4,500.
Yep.
Okay. And so you're saying that you do 10 virtuals, and out of those 10 virtuals, you'll get six to commit to a $4,500 price tag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's worth your time from,
A
and
hundred
especially
percent.
if you've got somebody else for sure. Okay, when we come back
Absolutely.
from break, I'm going to ask you exactly what you say at those virtuals because this is blowing my mind.
Absolutely. Can't wait for it.
Hey, Power Hour listeners, quick question. Are you reading the book yet? Of course, I'm talking about the Eye Care Boss book, the growth manual. Thousands of copies sold in just a couple months. And if you're reading it and you want help putting it to work, go to eyecareboss.com. There's over 40 free tools that you can download, and you can also do this from the QR codes in the chapters. It's the same tools that we use with practices on a regular basis. Speaking of which, we just wrapped up a year-long study. Before the book came out, we started working with groups of practices, about 25 locations, and on average, what are the results? Refractions are up 19.4%. Revenue is up 23.9% for this group. And in a market where everything is basically flat, I would call that exceptional. So if you want help using these concepts, you can run solo, just you and the book, and just get the tools. You can also work in a group, or you can go one on one with a coach. Your call. Go to eyecareboss.com. Your dream practice is waiting for you. All right, and we're back on the Power Hour. Kate, we were talking about the virtual visit, which is not something I've heard a lot about in the past, and so I'm just deeply fascinated. your myopia management close rates are fairly impressive, right? So, like, and just to, as if anybody's keeping up, if Kate sees 10 kids, well, let's go. Like, if Kate sees 20 kids this month, 10 of those kids will be candidates for myopia management. And out of those 10 kids, six of them will end up getting a myopia management program, which means that they will spend something like $27,000 collectively on a myopia management program. That's like not a bad return on investment for running a
Yeah.
back to school campaign, and seeing
Absolutely.
20 kids. And you see more than 20 kids. Like, you guys, how many how many kids do you sign up for myopia management every month in your practice?
So on average, it's anywhere between 15 to 20 kids a month, we would say. If we were to go back and look at historical data, it ranges anywhere between there.
Okay, great. And I'm imagining these months specifically, the back to school months, and especially since you started your back to school campaign a little bit early, I imagine it's been more than that.
Yeah, it's been crazy, but in a good way. We love it.
Okay, good, good, good. So now let's go back to that virtual consult. So you're on with the parent, and whether it's lunchtime or after hours or whatever, but you're on with the parents, so the both decision makers are present. Um, I imagine the show rates are pretty high. We can talk about how you get people to show up, but let's just assume they show up.
Yeah.
Um, what happens at that virtual visit? Talk me through that 40 minutes.
Sure. So I talk to the parents. Usually you only meet one in the exam lane. So I try to meet the other one. And then I sort of recap why we're here and say, little Johnny had an eye exam with me just the other week, and we found some concerning numbers that his eye length is a lot longer than what would we expect for someone his age. And his prescription is a lot higher for someone that we would expect for his age. And essentially I would then break it down so that the parents would hear again why eye length is so important to prescription rate. And so a lot of parents are kind of like, I don't even remember what she said. Like, there was so much that was going on. I had two other kids in that exam room with me. Like, what is happening? So I kind of just give a brief recap of the main points of why we're talking today, which is usually axial length, prescription, and then age and how they're all related. And then I usually go into, when we were growing up, we would just get glasses and our prescriptions would just get worse. And you would just get thicker and thicker glasses. And we would just say, bummer, that really stinks. And that's how a lot of people that we know end up with really high prescriptions or thick lenses or have to wear contact lenses on an all-time basis. And then I always ask, do either of you guys wear contacts or eyeglasses? Because I want to know what the prescription is for parents. Now, if they're wearing eyewear, it's easy to tell if someone's myopic super simply. But if they're wearing contacts on a virtual visit, it's really hard to tell. Or if people are like, well, I had LASIK, and I'm like, aha, two parents both had LASIK. That means that you're both myopic before you started procreating. So those are all things that I sort of lean into and say, there is a genetic component to this. So we know that when a child has nearsighted parents, it's likely for the children to become nearsighted as well. And so they will always ask, well, why did this happen to my child? As a parent, like, I want to know why things happen when things go wrong with my kid. And so we always talk about what our current research shows, decreased outdoor time, increased use of technology, urban versus rural areas. We go into all of the different potential contributing factors, but I never point it at just one. Ever. I usually always say that we think that myopia progression is multifactorial to some degree, whether you have a genetic component, whether it's because of the environment that you live in. I always try to let them know that no one thing that one person did made it wrong. Because, parents are very quick to be like, I told you it was the screens. I told you it was that iPad. Well, not necessarily. There's other things. It's part of it. So we go into the why behind it first so that they have a really good understanding of why. And then we go into how do we fix it? And so I let them know what the four main treatment options are. And I let them know what a program looks like. We're committing to 24 months of treatment for your child because we want to make sure that they have a really good foundation of slowing down the growth rate of their eye. We can't ever stop the growth of the eye, but we want to try to slow it down as much as we can to prevent a large change every year. And so that's another really important thing is I never promise that their prescription's not going to change, and I never promise that we're going to stop the growth of their eye, because we can't promise those things. But if we can let parents know that subtle changes in an appropriate time frame, that's good. Or small changes in growth rate, again, over the course of 6 to 12 months, that's appropriate. That's what our goal is. So I set goals after we go over all of the treatment options. And then I talk about what does a family's household lifestyle look like, based off of what little Johnny does. Does little Johnny like to swim? Are you guys up super early? Like, is someone there to assist with putting in contacts or taking them out? Or are we potentially not really good at touching our eyes? One question that I always ask parents, and this is particularly related to if a child is ready for contacts, is I say, do you have to remind little Johnny to brush his teeth every night? And if they say, oh no, he can brush his teeth every night without being asked, that's usually a pretty good responsibility factor if a child is ready from a responsibility perspective to handle contact lenses. So we talk about what's going to look best for the household. What are the parents thinking that's going to be best for the child? What was the child thinking? Like, what do they want? Do they even want contact lenses? Do they not? Do they think we're ready for them? All those types of decisions we talk about. And then we say, well, you know what? Let's start with this. The great news is that treatments evolve. And, over the course of the next 2 years, your child is going to gain 2 years of maturity. So even though we may start with, let's say, Stellest eyewear, and we say, okay, well, in 6 months from now, they're going to be playing football and they're going to need football or glasses under their helmet. Maybe we can switch to contact lenses 6 months from now. And all of that is included in our programming. So it's very flexible, and that gives parents a really good sense, like peace of mind, that they don't have to commit to just this one treatment for 2 years. If we need to switch to Ortho-K, or let's say we start with Ortho-K and the child does not adapt to it, and we need to switch back to eyewear or a soft daytime contact lens, we certainly can. So the parents feel a sense of relief knowing that there's multiple options available and that we're not committing to just one thing for the next 2 years.
Do you go over the modalities, right, or the options, right on the spot, kind of as you
Absolutely.
describe them? So how do you
Yep.
just give me an idea of how you talk about them?
Sure. So I usually say that we now have 4 treatment options available, which is amazing. We have an option which are eye drops that we could use at nighttime called atropine. Atropine has been around for a really, really long time, and it helps slow down the growth cells of the eyes. This is an eye drop that you would dose every night before bed, and you would still need to wear eyeglasses throughout the day. And then I straight up tell parents, this is how I practice. I say I usually reserve that for my younger kids, honestly. So my kids who are 4, 5, 6 years old that aren't necessarily ready for some of the other treatments, we save atropine for our littler kids. And I say, or I like to save atropine as a secondary additive therapy if being on just one of the treatments alone is not successful. So I start with atropine because it's really good based off of their age, but also I say it's a good option, but we're going to kind of save it in our back pocket depending on the child's age. And then I say that we have an eyeglass option and say, as of October of last year, we now have the ability to put myopia control lenses in a child's eyeglasses. And that's been amazing. I said that's been around in other countries for many years. And finally, the FDA said, yay. So we can utilize just a pair of eyeglasses if your child feels that having eyeglasses on their face is more comfortable. I go into the pros and cons of what that looks like. I make it very clear, though, that those eyeglasses are really only effective when worn for 12 hours a day in a very proper position. So just yesterday, I had a 7-year-old who is a minus 0.75 who came in thinking that they didn't need eyeglasses. Well, she's myopic and her axial length is long. And I told mom, I said, I don't necessarily think that eyeglasses are going to be ideal for her because she actually can see fine without eyeglasses. So those lower myopes, you just have to be very honest with parents and say, if your child is a low myope that can still like walk around the house seeing totally fine, it's going to be really challenging to ensure that they're wearing their eyewear 12 hours a day. So we go into pros and cons of both, and then we go into contact lenses. And I say there's two contact lens options. There is a daytime contact lens option, which is what you are probably familiar with, a soft, flexible lens. But that lens actually not only helps them see clearly, but it also has prescription sort of embedded in it to treat the eye and slow that growth rate. Soft contacts are super comfortable. Kids can pop them in and pop them out. There's been tons of studies showing that they can be very healthy and clean and very responsible with them. And as long as they're wearing them, 6 out of 7 days a week, they're incredibly effective. And then I go into there's also an overnight lens. And the reason I save Ortho K for last is because it is the most unfamiliar treatment for parents. And so that's where the most questions come from because no one's ever heard of a lens that you sleep in at nighttime and can magically see in the day. And it also helps slow the growth rate of their eye. So I usually go over Ortho K at the very end and then questions spawn from there. But I try to be as unbiased as possible when it comes to presenting a pro and a potential con for every treatment option and really try to make clear examples for parents of like, well, if little Johnny is a swimmer, he probably doesn't want to wear eyeglasses because he's going to need prescription goggles, or he probably doesn't necessarily want daytime contacts because he's going to potentially have a contact lens in a pool, and we don't really want to be messing around with that. And so, if someone is a swimmer or a heavy beach goer or lives by the coast, usually Ortho K is a great option. But if someone is more does more like indoor activities, like let's say they're more theatrical and they want to just be able to see when they're on stage, then I would say a daytime contact lens is totally fine. So we go over, child's habits, family preferences, and kind of make that decision together.
Yeah, and that's what I love about that. There's like so many layers of why this works. And just kind of thinking about it from the marketing and sales angle is what I love about this is that the family is kind of thinking through and customizing the treatment in their mind as you're talking about it because okay, we're customizing it to the lifestyle, we're evaluating the pros and cons together, we're on the same team. I'm not selling you anything, I'm working with you to help find a solution that makes sense. I'm your advisor. And the second part that I like is that when you brought it up and you said, well, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't cost you more if you end up switching modalities at some
Mhm.
point because either the lifestyle changes or the kid doesn't adapt to it well or whatever happens. I like that a lot because it really takes away the objection of well, what if the con of this particular treatment isn't right for me, right? That kind of makes perfect
Correct.
sense. Okay,
Well, and that's
top.
one thing that I'll just briefly mention really fast if we have time is that we used to price our treatments differently. So Ortho K, daytime contact lenses, atropine, they all used to be different pricing. And actually through the consultation of utilizing Treehouse Eyes, they said make it all the same because that way parents don't have to think about a price associated with a treatment. What parent wants to be backed into a corner and say, well, I want the best for my child, but I can't afford the higher, more expensive treatment option. So now I feel like I'm doing my child a disservice by picking what's cheapest. So we really have made all of our treatments the exact same pricing. All of the materials are included. That way, if we need to bounce around, we can. Our costs are covered. The parents are at ease knowing that they have that flexibility. And it's been really, really helpful for us to do it that way.
That makes sense. And so as new things came out, like I know it felt very disruptive to a lot of practices that were charging, $2,000 a year or something like that for myopia treatment when the Stellest lenses came out, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh man, like now people can get myopia glasses for a lot less than I was charging for my 1 year of treatment,
Sure.
and what you're saying is just bake it in and make it part of the optionality. And then it's not really a competitor to your myopia management program. It is a treatment, it is part of the global treatment plan.
Yep. We actually include the cost of 2 pairs of frames and lenses for the first 12 months of our 24-month package and an additional 2 pairs for the second month or second year, excuse me. So if a child signs up and is committed to Stellest for all 24 months, they are actually getting 4 pairs of eyeglasses through our office, frames and lenses with Stellest.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that's great. top three objections that come up in during these virtual consults, Kate.
Price, number one, cost, it's expensive. Two, does my child really need this? And three, is this voodoo? Those would be my top three objections.
Okay.
Because it is expensive. It's like getting braces for your child. Um, Parents are not familiar with this treatment. Like we said, it's not something that we grew up, like we weren't offered it as children. So it's completely new. They're very scared. New treatments for kids, not great. And then also voodoo, like what do you mean you can stop a prescription from changing? So I've gotten the I've gotten less questioning of the validity of the science behind it, I would say over the past year or two. So I think our industry has done a really good job of marketing myopia management just in general, because more parents seem to understand the importance than I would say 5 years ago. Five
Yeah, and
years
I think
ago, parents were
supervision
like,
and SLR definitely wants to thank for that
oh my
because they've
gosh.
deployed massive marketing budgets to try to educate patients. And I still, based off of what I know about patient behavior, I still don't think that patients really understand it, but at least they've heard of it.
Right.
It's not
Correct.
a complete like you're hitting me with something over the head that I don't even possibly start to recognize.
Right. And I think that as these treatments get more popular, I mean, a lot of our patients are referrals from established patients.
Mm.
So it's not super common that we just have a kid off the street that is getting their first exam today and has never heard of our practice or never heard of anything that is all of a sudden eligible for myopia management. Does that happen? It absolutely does. But once one child is enrolled and the parent understands the impact that these therapies have for these kiddos, they immediately start telling their friends. And then all of a sudden, we're seeing like the entire fifth grade class at the local elementary school. So
Uh,
we see like, oh, my friend sees you. Oh, you're my friend's doctor. And so that verbal word of mouth referral, once you earn a parent's trust and honestly a child's trust, that is your best marketing tool over anything else, honestly.
okay, I have man, I so we may have to do a part two. How do you earn a child's trust?
So the number one thing I do, like I said, going back to the very beginning, getting in the exam room, is I sit in the chair and immediately lower my chair to get on their level. 100%. I am always looking at the child. I actually very rarely look at a parent during an eye exam. And so some parents get pretty annoyed because my back is turned to them completely and they're trying to answer questions for the child. But I make it abundantly clear that a child is my patient, not the parent. And so I am constantly facing the patient, eye contact with them, being silly, asking them what they like to do, what's your favorite show, like what did you eat for breakfast? Are you going to get a donut after this? And so I'm trying to make them be a lot more relaxed and know that I'm more of a friend than I am another doctor that they have to see, or they're going to get a shot, or a dentist that's drilling in their teeth. So I try to be as friendly and as eye level as possible, number one, but also really focus on the child. Like, even when we start going into some of these treatment options in front of the child, I actually break it down on their level and I say, you can put in this little piece, this little contact in your eye and go to school and you can see the board perfectly without glasses. How cool would that be? And so I try to get them equally as excited and plant the seed for them. Like, I think I could do that. Like, oh yeah, I brush my teeth twice a day. I can put in contacts and take out. So I become a friend that way, but I also try to instill as much confidence in a child as well. 2 days ago, I had a little girl. She dances pretty competitively at our local school of ballet. And she essentially was really scared about wearing contacts. And as a former dancer myself, I was able to relate to her and said, well, do you remember when you learned how to do a pirouette? You have a dominant leg and a non-dominant leg. You need to learn how to do it on both sides. You're going to have to learn how to do contacts in both your eyes. And if you can do that on each leg, you easily can do that on each eye. And so I try to just instill a ton of confidence in the kid, let them know that I believe in them. And then once they do it, celebrate them so much. Oh my gosh, do we celebrate the kids? Like, oh my gosh, you did it. Like, we give them prizes. Like, it's a huge hoopla. Like, everyone in the office cheers. So let them know that, like, it is a fun place. We are on their team because we're a part of their care team. Every single person in our office is a part of their care team,
That's how
and we
you
all
get
accept ownership
referrals.
of
That's
that.
what no wonder you get so many referrals because as a parent, I'm like listening to you talk and I'm like, man, like if my kid went to a fun doctor's office where like she was doing a hard thing and it was kind of celebrated for her and the whole office was like on her team, that would be like an awesome experience for my kid, which then is a good experience for me because I want my kid to
Yep.
be happy. So like it's brilliant, like psychologically brilliant, but it's also intuitively like it just it's such a great thing to do, and that's how you can see the whole fifth grade class because now that parents like,
Yeah.
man, like those people over there, like they really know how to take care of little Johnny or little Susie.
Yeah, it's funny because when we start to let kids off the leash, like for year 3 and year 4, I'll be like, "Hey, I don't have to see you for 6 months. You're doing so good." And the number of kids that are like, "Wait, really? You don't?" Like they get
Oh,
sad that they don't have to come in, and I'm like, "You're doing so good."
hey, the money thing you mentioned was your top objection. Do you guys do financing?
Yeah. So we used to do financing. It's a great question. We used to offer in-house financing, and we thought that that was going to be a really good idea. And a lot of parents did choose to do that, a monthly payment over the course of 24 months. However, from a business finance perspective, it was really challenging for our accounts receivable. And at the end of the year, our accountants were like, "What are you doing? Like, you have all of these outstanding balances." So recently, in the past few months, we've actually offered an alternative payment where the parents can actually choose their own financing through Cherry, which is very similar to Care Credit. But we now offer not only Care Credit, but also Cherry has been a huge game changer for us, not just with myopia management, but we also offer dry eye or, higher luxury eyewear. They can choose how they want to repay back over the course of 6, 9, 12 months, and then we get our full payment within 24 hours. So we used to offer financing. It did not go well from a practice management perspective. I know other practices do it differently. Some can say, hey, we'll do 50 this year, 50 next year. We've just decided, we are committed. We're committed to the child's treatment. We're committed to making sure that your child is getting the best from us. And so it's all up front. Everything's included. Every time you see us over the next 24 months, we won't ask for anything else. If we have to initiate dual therapy, if we switch modalities, no more money discussions are going to be had. Everything is included. And that's been really helpful for a lot of parents because they know, like, while I'm investing in this, I know my child's going to be taken care of really
But it
well.
sounds like you have a third party service that allows them to
Yes.
still fit into their budget.
Yep.
Um, Yeah, okay. And then I just like from a quality of life standpoint, I bet there's a lot of people listening. Like, how many of these like 7 or 8 o'clock at night conversations are you having? I mean, I understand the financial benefits, but like,
Yeah.
you ever get sick of talking to parents after hours?
So I used to do a lot of after hours consults. I'll be honest, I really don't do them personally anymore. Through Treehouse Eyes, they offer a lot of virtual consultation services in my absence. And so they have trained team members that know all of the treatment options, that know what our programming is for our office particularly, and they speak on our behalf. Like I said, my 2-year-old at home, he goes to bed at like 7:30, so I really don't have a lot of time to do consults in the evening anymore. So luckily, partnering with them has been really helpful. So we do have other trained members that now do my after hours ones, but I'll still oftentimes get on a consult over the lunch hour, or Friday afternoons are an admin time for me. I'll schedule it on a Friday afternoon for patients if they want to speak with me directly versus one of my team members.
And is
But
the
if
conversion
you,
rate
I'm sorry.
is the conversion rate okay when you have somebody outside? I guess like are they like do they present as an extension of your office if they're like
Absolutely. Yep.
oh,
They present pretty much as part of us, and they know exactly the things that I want to say. They know what our treatment, program looks like, which can be different from practice to practice, but they know when a patient is calling on behalf of our office that they speak and represent our office.
and that's through Treehouse. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Interesting. All right. Since we're basically out of time, Kate, this has been so interesting as a conversation. last question for you is, if a practice could change just like one thing to become more effective at myopia management in their practice, like they're excited about it, but like for some reason they're just not getting the pickup, like what would that thing be? Or if you want to answer the same question on a different spin, is like, what's the biggest mistake most practices make, or what's the biggest mistake you made as you were getting good at this before you got good at this?
I think it goes back to this isn't an option for me. Like, this is what we have to do as optometrists. This is our duty. If someone is actively going blind with a different disease, we will absolutely step in and do everything we can to stop that. That's in our code of conduct. That's the oath that we take. Myopia and a progressive prescription in a young child should be seen exactly the same way. This is how we should view every child who has a disease that we can stop and slow down. And so that would be the biggest mindset shift, is that it's no longer an option. It's no longer a, well, you can do it. It could work. It's a, hey, your child has an issue. We have treatments. We're going to get them started, and I'm here to help every step of the way. So just really making it more of an ingrained standard of care. Just like if you have a patient on Plaquenil, you have to do Plaquenil testing. If you have a patient that's myopic, we have to do myopia management if they're progressing. And so that would be the biggest mental shift that I would encourage all of our colleagues to really ingrain that. And once you wrap your head around it, like if that child in that chair is yours, if you birthed that child, would you not want the best for them? Assume that responsibility, and you absolutely will change your perspective when you're talking to families.
That's awesome. All right, I love that, and that's a great way to finish our episode. Kate, thank you so much for your time,
Yeah.
for sharing some of your success, and really like handing us a play-by-play guide here for myopia management success in the midst of your busy back-to-school season. Thank you for being on the Power Hour, Kate.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.